today's webinar, The Government Cloud, What's Working Now and the Blueprint for the Future. I'm your moderator, James Baker, with the Public Sector Technology Exchange. The Public Sector Technology Exchange is an independent forum that discusses the technology challenges impacting government, industry, and the citizen. To learn more about the Public Sector Technology Exchange, visit us online.
Before we get started with today's webinar, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. We have a national crowd of several hundred government and industry technology executives join us for today's forum. The webinar is going to last 60 minutes, and after the event, we'll send you a link to listen to the recording. Kindly, during the course of this webinar, put your phones or computer system on mute. You can also use the dashboard to submit questions during the webinar. We, again, have a very large crowd of people. We had over 50 questions come in through the internet, so your questions are very important to us. In the event that we don't get to all of our questions, please send them to me after the event, and I will make sure they get answered. Finally, the last thing at the end of the event, if you could take a few minutes for us and fill out the event survey. Now, I would like to take a moment and thank our sponsors, Unisys and Salesforce, for making today's event possible. We're now going to have a few words from Ryan Hughes with Unisys. Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. Hey, we're very pleased to have all of this IT executive leadership from the state and local governments on the line with us. I know a lot of the panelists have been supporters and visionaries of cloud for many years, so it's nice to have them step back and hear from them firsthand what's been working and what the future holds for the use of cloud in government. So a big thanks to all the panelists, and thanks again to you, Jimmy. Back to you.
Thank you. And now a word from Steve Thompson with Salesforce. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Jimmy. This is Steve Thompson with Salesforce. I would just like to say thank you for all of our customers and partners that are on today's webinar, and as well for our colleagues on the panel. And we look forward to making this a productive event for you today.
Thank you very much, Steve. And now, before we get started with introducing our esteemed panel, we're going to shoot out a quick poll just to get your feedback on what are some of the key issues that are impacting your organization as it relates to cloud. If you could take a moment and vote on security, mobile citizen, public versus private cloud, as well as stimulating economic growth through the cloud, we'd appreciate it. Okay, I see a few people have voted. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Now, what I'd like to do is just take a moment, and we're going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves. Jason, why don't we go ahead and start with you? And if you could introduce yourself to the audience, as well as tell us a little bit of what you do with in the state of Washington.
Okay, I'm Jason McKee, and I'm with the Washington State Office of the CIO. I'm a solutions architect, and my job's sort of a split between our office does policy, and obviously we're pushing cloud pretty heavily in Washington State, and we also perform an oversight function on big IT projects. So when there's a number of different agencies that are all collaborating together on building a big system, I'm involved in that process to sort of help keep everybody going in the same direction.
Thank you for that. Bob, could you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Bob Woolley. I'm the Chief Technical Architect for the state of Utah. We've been working with a hybrid cloud development environment since 2009, so we've been at this for a while, and increasingly most of our major systems are winding up in cloud deployments, so we've had some good experience in this area.
Thank you for that. Stephen Welsh, could you just introduce yourself to the audience? I'm not sure if I'll go ahead and introduce Stephen Welsh, and he may have his phone on mute, but Stephen is the Chief Information Officer for the State of Arizona Department of Corrections. Now we'll ask Steve Thompson with Salesforce to introduce himself to the audience. Steve?
Yes, again, Steve Thompson. I'm with Salesforce. I'm the National Platform Director for Public Sector, focused on state and local government. I have the unique opportunity to meet with CIOs, CTOs, technologists all throughout the country and have had the wonderful experience in having great dialogues with these executives and leaders around the cloud and how the cloud can actually have a huge impact to improving value, increase the rapid application development for services and applications, and improve value to citizens. So look forward to chatting more today.
Thank you, Steve. And Ben Berry, who's joining us on his birthday. So Ben, happy birthday. And if you could talk a little bit about your role in the city of Portland.
Thank you, James. It's always a pleasure to be here. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the City of Portland. We have about 750,000 constituents, about 6,000 employees here at the city, and about 205 Bureau of Technology staff. We are a very heavy user of software as a service in the cloud.
Okay, thank you, Ben. And Stephanie. Stephanie literally just retired less than a week ago here in the state of California. Stephanie, but if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, Jimmy. Glad to be here. I have been for the last several years the Chief IT Security Officer for the California Department of Justice. We have been introducing a lot of different cutting-edge technology, moving forward with a lot of mobile. We've been exploring the cloud. I've had over 19 and a half years of experience in both privacy and security, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. Sean, if you could just say a few words about yourself.
Hello, this is Sean McSpaden. Very glad to be with you all today. My current role is with the Oregon Legislative Fiscal Office. I serve as a principal legislative information technology analyst, one of two in the Legislative Fiscal Office. Prior to that time, I served as Oregon's Deputy State Chief Information Officer for about 5.5 years and had direct responsibility for implementation of a variety of software as a service solutions and also developing the state's first software as a service strategy, as well as working on a variety of contracts for other cloud services that I'm sure we'll talk about later in the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Ryan.
Hi, yes, Ryan Hughes. I'm the Cloud Services Executive for Unisys for North America. So I mostly work with state and local governments across the United States, spending a lot of time in a lot of the states that we have represented today. So it's fun to get back in contact with these guys. And, you know, we at Unisys, we have a lot of different solutions that we offer around the cloud, cloud hosting, cloud provisioning services, cloud consulting and design services that I'm in charge of for our state and local clients. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, and the last person there on the screen is me, James Baker. I'm today's moderator. I'm also the managing partner of the Public Sector Technology Exchange, as well as an author on the topic of government and technology. Now, let me tell you quickly how the format for today's webinar will begin. I have a few questions that I would like to ask the panel and interact and get their responses on. As I mentioned to you early in the broadcast, we have representation from local, state, and federal government all over the entire United States. And we got an enormous amount of questions coming in from security to cloud best practices, and we have an hour, so we're certainly going to try to get to all those questions. After my questions for the panel, I'm going to open it up to you, the audience. You can use the chat feature question box there on your screen, and you can submit those to me, and we'll certainly try to get the questions answered for you. Now, my first questions are for Ben Berry, who is the CTO for the city of Portland, Oregon. Ben, and I'm going to shift here in a second and get your slides up. But one of the things that I'd like to ask you is there's a lot of risk when we look at data and security and what's going on in the cloud. And one of the things I'd like you to comment on is who owns the data. And if you could comment on that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Well, here at the city, we have a number of applications and databases that we use in our transparency program in terms of open data. And so what we end up doing is working with our bureau directors to place that kind of data where it's non-personal identifiable information data into our open database service. That way the private sector can make reuse of the data, But sometimes it's a difficult conversation. And so we have to make sure that we are understood to be stewards of the data because the citizens have actually paid for this data. And of course, we're charged with the safekeeping of all of that.
Well, and I also know too, Ben, which a lot of the people joining in may not know, is Ben, you have a long history within not only the city of Portland but the state of Oregon. So you have a long career in working with a variety of different cloud services. And I remember you and I being on an event several years ago when people were just beginning to embark on the cloud. The other question I'd have for you today is, should software as a service be centralized? Kindly comment to me, what is working in the city of Portland? And also let me know if I need to move these slides along as well.
Sure. Well, you can put the first few slides up, James. As we all know, in the public sector, we underwent the recession, and actually Portland in IT, we lost about 38 FTEs over 5 years. Now we're in more of a sustainment program of bringing more services online, and actually we're adding staff this coming fiscal year. But because of that, we turned as a city to software as a service. So where the bureaus, my customers, had dollars in which to bring in applications, we subscribed to that. Central IS actually subscribed to that because it meant more capacity to do more with our customers and bring things faster to market, so to speak, without having to depend totally with the backlog of things that we would have had to done centrally in IT. So we've collaborated with the bureaus. We team on these projects that may be cloud-based because there's things here on the ground within central IT, the Bureau of Technology Services, that we also want to make sure that we're using standards and the things will actually work once they're turned on.
Thank you, Ben.
My next question is for Steve Thompson, National Platform Director with Salesforce. Steve, would you comment on what are some of the challenges that have been addressed by rapid application development in the cloud, as well as the ROI associated with moving to the cloud?
Sure, Jimmy, thank you. Allow me to begin with some of the challenges. IT's traditionally been forced to focus on infrastructure, which really leaves very little time for innovation. And when you look at it a little closer, the problem is that IT has been historically burdened with managing all this infrastructure to run all their applications. And essentially about 8 out of every 10 IT dollars is spent on keeping all this infrastructure current and maintaining all these systems. And really as a result, the IT teams, being that they've been so focused on infrastructure, on the governance, and just really keeping their apps up and running, or essentially keeping the lights on, if it were, they just don't have the bandwidth to innovate and help organizations really add more value. Another major challenge stems from the fact that the application development process that traditional premise-based systems and their environments have to deal with, when you compare that to a cloud-based application development environment, it becomes a very interesting situation. So if you look at it again a little more closely, it just takes way too long to build applications in the legacy on-premise environment. And that's because you have to buy all the hardware and set it all up. It's very complicated. The software needs to be installed. That's a non-trivial task. You need to define all your users, set up all your reporting and analytics, and then test out all your security. And then, heaven forbid, if you want to make it mobile or social, you've got to build all those kinds of programmatic elements into the equation relative to the device type you're going to roll it out to. Then you finally build your application and roll it out. And again, this can take anywhere from months to years in your traditional premise-based environment. When you compare that to a cloud-based application development world, there's really a significant difference. For starters, the cycle time to go from idea to app is very, very short. It's usually weeks, if not maybe months at most. And with the Salesforce One platform, you just don't need to buy all that hardware, don't need to buy all that complex software and install all that. It just comes with the infrastructure. And then, all your other application development type functionality that you would normally have to program in ends up becoming all these services that come right out of the box, if you will. And as a result, you just essentially create the application via points and clicks and not deep application code. And it just enables you to then save a tremendous amount of time and add more value and get the application rolled out more quickly. And then finally, with the platform up in the cloud, when you compare that to the legacy-based systems, you're really turning that paradigm upside down. And all that application development time that was spent managing the infrastructure goes away because all that infrastructure is now up in the cloud being managed by Salesforce or your cloud application provider. So really the bottom line by moving to the cloud is your cloud-based application process is truly the fastest path to going from idea to application. And here's a quick example of one customer that's actually gone through this experience before. This is Texas Department of Information Services, or Information Resources, DIR. And they were faced with a difficult challenge of trying to not only integrate their back office systems to eliminate inconsistencies and eliminate all these siloed systems, but they needed to replace their manual processes and their manual systems and roll out applications much more quickly. And as a result, they built initially 30 applications that were quite easy to use and quite effective for all of their agencies to take advantage of, to where they could consolidate all their purchasing of different devices, information technology services and products, and get a tremendous economy of scale through these budget apps and finance apps. And they've gone so far as to now roll this out to all of their 125 agencies that support thousands of employees around the state, for both state agencies, county and city government, as well as education agencies. And what they found is they've been able to seamlessly integrate all these different applications together, build a consolidated view on a single platform, and radically reduce their application development time down from, in this case, 18 months to just a matter of weeks. And then finally, if you look at it from an ROI standpoint, a study was recently published by IDC that showed that cloud-based customers can receive upwards to a 520% return on investment. And that's because the application can get rolled out so much more quickly, oftentimes up to 70% faster. More applications can actually get rolled out. In this case, it was proven that 80% more apps can be developed in this rapid application development platform and launched every year than in a given premise-based environment. And the IT organization is even more productive. There's been a measured 44% increase in their abilities to actually create these applications more efficiently and at the same time saving costs. And probably the biggest benefit is because you no longer have to purchase the hardware and the software, all that infrastructure sets of issues now go away, and as a result, there's a roughly 75 to 85% reduction in infrastructure costs. So overall, it's quite an amazing story and an ability by which you can gain all these benefits by going from the premise-based environment up into the cloud-based environment.
Steve, my next question for you is, how can a cloud platform take advantage of the investments made in premise-based legacy systems?
Sure, Jimmy. So to take advantage of the investments made on prem systems and legacy systems, you first have to do what we call unlock your back office data. And by using the Salesforce One platform, you can leverage your existing application investments in SAP or Oracle or Microsoft by easily integrating the back office data with new agile front office apps that you build in the Salesforce One platform. Now, you can easily build these applications as both social and mobile type apps that can unlock this trapped data and extend it out to every department and every employee within the agency. And that's because our apps are built on the Salesforce platform, are right out of the box designed to be both mobile and social. And as a result, you can then roll them out to iPads, to smartphones, whether they be iPhones, Androids, that kind of thing. And you can also take advantage of the new social collaboration technologies such as Facebook and Twitter to maximize user productivity. And because the Salesforce One platform provides instant scale and built-in analytics, your applications can be powered with live data feeds and real-time dashboards that really instantly make them social and enable just better decision making. And combining the cloud with your SAP and Oracle or whatever your back office application environment is immediately delivers new business value to those investments that you've made in those legacy systems, so that you can now bring out new information, new decision-making capabilities, new services, new programs to market much more quickly with fewer application development resources and a significantly less amount of cost than what you currently have with your on-premise systems. And here's another good example of that kind of an implementation that was done, again, integrating back office systems with the Salesforce One platform. At the state of Colorado, they faced and really overcame the major challenge of this integration to legacy systems and provided a single interface to improve the citizen self-sufficiency for public assistance. And some of the key challenges were that they had multiple different agencies across the state of Colorado, such as the Colorado Department of Human Services, who designs and delivers healthcare premium services to improve safety, independence, and the well-being of Coloradans, to the Colorado Healthcare Policy and Financing Organization that administers Medicaid and child healthcare plans, and other agencies. All these were separate, siloed kind of agencies with their own systems. And they needed to tie all these systems together so they could manage the benefits in a much more cohesive fashion. And the solution that they implemented was the Colorado PEAKS application, which stands for Colorado Program Eligibility and Application Kit. And it's really their flagship tool that allows these agencies to meet the needs of their citizens based upon the increased demand for enrollment in food programs, cash programs, and medical assistance programs. And it's all a web-based portal that was deployed on the Salesforce One platform that enables the citizens to gain access to this critical information on a self-service basis and allows them to get the benefits they need online. And the bottom line is really amazing. The productivity benefits were quite outstanding. It reduced the amount of data entry required by the back office data entry workers, increased the outreach and accessibility of the programs in general across the state, and now Colorado is actually able to process anywhere from 6 to nearly 9 times more applications each day for these critical services.
Thank you, Steve, for that answer. Our next question is for Stephanie Cervantes. Stephanie just recently retired earlier this month from the California Department of Justice. Stephanie, the first question I'm going to ask you is something that we got asked by many of the registrants, and I'd like you to comment on it. The question is as follows. The FBI's Criminal Justice Information Services, CJIS, security policy has expanded to allow cloud services for law enforcement data if certain requirements are met. Can you tell us what the California Department of Justice has done to enable cloud providers to meet the CJIS requirements?
I'm not surprised, Jimmy, that you got a lot of questions in regard to this because I also did in the past. And basically what has happened is that many of the cloud providers can meet a lot of the requirements outlined in the August 2012 FBI recommendations for implementing the cloud computing solutions document. However, a lot of them are not doing background checks. And so earlier this year, the California Department of Justice and the Attorney General's Office entered into an agreement with Microsoft to conduct background checks on all of their cloud employees that are operating in the government space. And these background checks let them know whether or not there's been, any kind of criminal activity. And they also provide what we call wrap-backs. So if they have any type of contact with a law enforcement officer, that information is then sent back to Microsoft through the Department of Justice. So that enables them to meet some of those hard-to-meet CJIS requirements.
Stephanie, my second question for you is something that many of the folks attending today's broadcast are certainly experiencing. With budget cuts, key technologists retiring, and the difficult many public sector entities have in attracting and retaining highly trained technical staff, more and more public sector entities are looking at cloud services. What should they be considering first before making the leap?
Yeah, as Steve just mentioned, there are a lot of reasons to move to the cloud, especially with the shrinking workforce and, the need for the talent pool not being always there, especially in public sector. But one of the first things that we need to look at from the security and privacy aspect before we allow our CTOs and CIOs and business managers to go to the cloud is to find a cloud that has the right fit for them. And basically, to do that, we need to understand what the business need is and what the type of data that they want to place there. There are some types of data that in this time currently may not be suitable for the cloud. And then there's a lot of data that can absolutely be put there. So those types of questions, how quickly they need to access it, what the retention of it should be, those are all things to address once we define what they want to do. The other thing that I would suggest to security professionals is to circle the wagons with your privacy people, your technology staff, lay out requirements in advance so that you have templates out there that address all of the control layers. Typically, you want to address your applications and your data levels, your end services, your network, operations, and platform areas. For instance, you may call out that you need certain types of encryption, the way that your data may need to be segregated. That will help you in determining what type of a cloud you need to go to. You may have auditing requirements where you have to test against ISO 27001 or 02, or you have to comply with Statement of Auditing Standards number 70, Service Organizations, so SAS 70 Type 2, or SOC 2 and 3 reports. So basically, figure out what you have, where you need to go, and that will help you build your requirements so that you can talk intelligently with your business folks.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Forgive me too, folks, I just got a note from Stephen Welsh. Stephen, are you still on the call with us? I know that you had an emergency come up, and I didn't know if you were still on. I wanted to ask you a few quick questions, but I do know that you had to leave the call a little bit early. Are you still there, Stephen? Okay, it doesn't sound like it, folks. Stephen Welsh from the State of Arizona Department of Corrections, they had an emergency come up and he had to leave the call early. So if you have any questions for him, I'll make sure to forward him after the event. The next person that I want to talk to on our panel is Sean. Sean, I'm going to jump. I know that you have a couple slides here to share with our audience, and I have a few questions for you as well. And while I ask you the first question, I'll go ahead and get your slides up. But Sean, what is the single most important factor that affects the ability of a state government organization to drive towards consolidation as well as the widespread adoption of cloud services? Can you comment on that? And I'm going to go ahead and get your slide deck up. Bear with me just a moment.
I'm glad to do that, Jimmy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, and bear with me just a moment. I'm pulling up your slide deck that you put together.
No worries. I've got it here as well, and certainly I can speak to it. But in regard to your question, really what we're talking about here is an organization-wide deployment, a state government-wide deployment of or movement from internally provided services to the use of cloud services. And certainly most of the states and organizations around the country have kind of dipped their toes into the water, so to speak, into the software as a service realm, infrastructure as a service in regard to virtual servers or storage volumes in the cloud, that kind of thing. But again, what we're talking about here is, as an example, the movement of an entire organization from internally provided office products, word processing, spreadsheets, PowerPoints, etc., to a cloud service, whether it be, as an example, Google Apps or an Office 365. I'll just use that example to illustrate the point. We had an opportunity about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, to interview about a dozen state, local, and federal government organizations that had moved their organization in that direction. And what we found, and again, this is from the perspective of the folks who were responsible for implementation, what we found universally was that they really felt the single most important factor in the successful implementation of their efforts really centered around either a legislative mandate or an executive mandate through an executive order. They felt, generally speaking, that in this area, you really had to be all in. You had to have the entire organization move together. Otherwise, what you end up doing is splintering your IT environment. You're making it more complex, and generally speaking, the more complex your environment is, the less standardization that exists in the environment, the more expensive it is, the more complex it is to maintain and support. And so that would be my answer.
I had two other questions for you, just real quick, and also with the folks looking at the screen, one of the things Sean points out here is the WSCA contract, and a little bit later on in the presentation, we're going to talk about what that cooperative purchasing agreement is between states and how you can take advantage of it. But Sean, I just had two other quick questions for you, and I'll kind of say them back to back, and then I'll move the slides along with it. But what role should an application portfolio manager play, as it relates to information asset classification as well as cloud service adoption? Could you comment on that?
Sure. In our view, really, as organizations begin to assess, where the sweet spots are. I saw a slide earlier from Ben Berry that was on the screen briefly, conveyed a process by which folks would identify early wins, kind of midterm or medium-term avenues, and then long-term, strategic deployment of cloud services. And in our view, in order to even be able to construct a model like that, to stage the potential movement of applications from an internal environment to a cloud environment, you have to know what you have. And so, we really believe that application portfolio management, having an inventory of your applications, understanding how old they are, understanding whether or not they're still meeting the business need, and then ultimately transitioning over to information asset classification, identifying what kind of data is processed through those applications. Really, you have to know that in order to set your software as a service strategy and begin to methodically drive in the direction of cloud service adoption.
Well, let me ask you one last question. What has Oregon's experience been in cloud service adoption over the last few years? I know there's been a lot of changes there in the state recently. If you could just quickly comment on that.
Sure. We've had a number of, I'll say, niche deployments in the area of infrastructure as a service and software as a service. I don't know yet that we've actually moved completely into an offering of platform as a service other than our GIS area. But our state data center has a variety of contracts with Easy Street, with Verizon Business Services, for something we called IT brokered capacity services. We've had a number of software as a service deployments in the area of email, a collaboration suite with Jive Software, with e-recruitment with a company called NeoGov, in the web conferencing area with iLink Communications and AT&T. And then in the GIS area, we've deployed with our partners at Esri a state aerial imagery services application that's hosted in the Amazon cloud. that is co-managed by the state of Oregon and Esri, and then also we have something called ArcGIS Online that we've deployed statewide for use by state agencies and local governments. The last thing I'd mention is that we are currently evaluating a number of solutions or a number of methods to replace the state's human resource information system. We've looked at software as a service in the area of procurement in the past, and certainly there are a variety of offerings in the portfolio management space that I think we'll be looking at in the near future.
Well, thank you for those answers, Sean. Next, I have a couple questions for Bob Woolley, Chief Technical Architect with State of Utah Department of Technology Services. Bob, glad you're here today. My first question for you is, what are the kinds of added value government IT organizations can bring to customers by leveraging the cloud?
Well, I think one of the things that becomes really important here is a number of the skills needed to leverage a cloud environment are not so different from some of what you do in a premise environment. One of the big differences being that the stack is better defined, and system administrators and others have the opportunity to really get into that, and I think do a much better job than they could before with more ill-defined environments. The other thing that state IT organizations can do, I think, that is important is, as vendors, you guys are always telling us how cool it is for this to be a pay-as-you-go, you pay what you use. Unfortunately, budgets in state government don't quite work that way most of the time. And so the IT organization has the opportunity really, to some extent, to act as a shock absorber for the agency so the agency can continue to maintain some predictable expense control. I think that's a very important issue.
Bob, I have one other question for you today. How does the IT organization and the CIO, ultimately act as a broker for different agencies for service provision?
What we've done is we've established a business case process where when we get a request to procure deploy in the cloud, we go through it, we look at it, we look at what the advantages and the values are, and we lead that charge and try to be fairly objective. This is an interesting process because it causes us to look at not only the advantages we think we're going to get in the cloud, but to look carefully at where we really are now. And sometimes we have delusions of security and delusions of grandeur in other ways on our premise environments. And generally a good hard business look at it helps us to get a better picture of where we really are and then compare where we could be. So I think that has been a useful thing. Interestingly enough, everybody that's gone through that process so far have all gotten their cloud deployments approved. That says something.
Thank you, Bob. Two last questions for our panel, and then we're going to open it up to the audience here. Jason McKee, Solutions Architect for the Office of the CIO, State of Washington. And I know there's a lot of exciting things going on with cloud in the state of Washington. Jason, what do you think are the major barriers for government moving to the cloud? And then as a follow-on question to that, do you think the cloud's really secure enough for government data?
Sure. So major barriers. Procurement's a problem. We've had a lot of luck with the WISC contract. We'll let Ryan talk about that. But master contracts, because a lot of the cloud services are more expensive than the sort of just buy it limits that agencies have available to them, but don't cost so much that running an RFP is more expensive than what they would pay for the software. So master contracts are getting those in place really helps drop barriers. But cultural aspects as well. There's a lot of fear of change and losing my job. A lot of people have their identity wrapped around the idea of I'm the guy that racks servers, or I wrote this accounting system and I know all there is to know about this accounting system. So, there's fear from the infrastructure side that, infrastructure as a service is going to get rid of their job. Developers are afraid that, we're just going to buy SaaS products and they'll have nothing to do. And, the reality of it is, sort of looking objectively and, how many IT shops and government organizations have enough staff to do everything they need to do? And how many have a giant backlog of things? If you take, sort of commodity things that can easily be shipped out, like accounting systems, a lot of organizations, everybody has an accounting system. But a lot of government organizations have systems that are very specific to their line of business, and those are often much more interesting to work on. Similarly with the infrastructure, sure, you're not racking servers anymore, but if you have infrastructure as a service, you still have to maintain the operating systems. You still have to maintain the applications. Servers need patching. Load balancers need configuring. You have to pay attention to all of it. So it's really sort of helping your staff walk through the idea that their job isn't going away, their job is changing, and that's okay because it's changing to more interesting things. What's falling off the trailing end is commodity type skills, and that leaves the more interesting stuff. The other piece about going to the cloud is if you just take what you have and you push it into the cloud with like infrastructure, you might save some money. You might not save some money. It might be more expensive. The cloud is a different sort of creature. So how you build your applications, how you design your virtual infrastructure that lives in the cloud, it needs to change to really take advantage. I mean, not that you can't just take everything on-prem, ship it up to the cloud, but drives fail, power supplies fail, servers fail. They die on-premise, and they die in the data center of cloud providers. The difference is cloud providers, that is their business, is dealing with those failures, and because they're working at such scale, they actually get a lot more practice recovering than you do. If you build your app, but the flip side is they've built their systems so that those failures don't hurt you as bad. So what may be a perfectly reasonable, here's my database server, here's my web server, and it runs in my data center. If you put that in the cloud, you're going to have about the same failure rate as you have in your data center. If you take advantage of the cloud services with their load balancers and the automatic scaling, and you build your application for those platforms, you get a huge bonus. So jump into the security. I think what the cloud really does is it brings into sharp focus where the security responsibilities are. When everything is living on premise, it's all you, and you can just sort of think of, yeah, it's my organization's responsibility. These data centers, they have, all sorts of certifications. They spend a lot of time on security, and you need to make sure that, whatever provider you work with, meets your needs. So if you need a criminal justice certification, not every provider has that. So you need to make sure, you get that baseline. But at the end of the day, if for infrastructure as a service, your provider, they do infrastructure, they do network, they do physical security. However, you're still responsible for patching your operating system. Your developers are still responsible for building a secure application. And sort of like Bob was saying, when you look real closely at, what is your on-prem reality and what is the cloud reality, if you have an application with a SQL injection vulnerability, it's just as insecure in your data center as it is in the cloud. And for infrastructure, that's not that's not your provider's responsibility.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the response to that, Jason. Before we move into the audience's questions, and Jason, there are going to be a couple other questions for you, I'm sure, as with your solutions architect background. I have a question for Ryan Hughes, who's with Unisys. Ryan, we've noticed in our research that government cooperative purchasing is gaining momentum all around the country, especially for cloud computing and software as a service. I know that Unisys holds an award from WSCA NASPO for cloud services. Can you explain exactly what WSCA NASPO is and how government customers are using the contract to date? And I will tell you, Ryan, we had many people online that would like to get more information about this. They're intrigued by the idea of how it works. So if you could comment on that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. WSCA stands for the Western States Contracting Alliance, and NASPO stands for the National Association of State Procurement Officers. That organization is a cooperative purchasing organization that enables states to share contracting powers. So the state of Utah was nice enough to put on the RFP a couple years ago for the public cloud computing contract, and they had a lot of help from a few other states, obviously. And now we've had going on 10 states sign up to leverage that contract that came out of Utah. And so what you get out of a cooperative agreement that might be different or more advantageous than a single state or single entity contract or RFP process is you get aggregate discounts from a usage level. So if you think about cloud computing, your price goes down as you use more. And so with the WSCA contract, as the state of Washington, the state of Montana, Utah, Arizona, Alaska, Hawaii, Missouri, all these states that are signed up, they utilize cloud services, they're actually driving aggregate volume of usage. And that means lower prices for all involved. And so that's really the power of what a WSCA contract means. And when you apply that to the extreme economics of cloud computing, you get a really special combination, which is why these entities have jumped on and have started using it for infrastructure as a service, platform and software as a service. And also, there's a lot of services that go on before and after the cloud. It's not all just about the infrastructure. It's not all about the platform. There's planning for cloud. What do I have now in my data center? There's a lot of organizations that don't know what applications are running on what infrastructure and what VMs and how much CPU and RAM and storage and network those applications are utilizing. And those type of analysis are important before you just, forklift an application into the cloud. As you, if you're not grabbing all of the application, maybe it's got an API connection to something or an old database, ODBC connection to something that you don't even realize. That planning aspect and that asset management of those cloud applications is really important. And then just as important, as Jason mentioned, on the back end is the management aspect of what happens to those applications once you put them on the cloud. Who's going to manage the OS? Who's going to do updates to the application? Is it going to be the provider, or is it going to be the state? The cloud really helps you clarify and delineate between the shared responsibility that is necessary there.
Okay. Ryan, I want you to hold on. We're going to open it up to the audience for questions, but one of the first questions is actually from the state of Utah that I want to direct over you, but let me just take a pause. We are at the top of the hour, and we're going to go another 15 minutes. As we mentioned, this is a 60-minute webinar. I want to thank our panel right now for just the detailed responses to all the questions, but I want to open it up now to you, the audience. I'm going to ask the panel when we respond to these questions, and I know some of them are very complex answers, but if you could take about 30 seconds to a minute to respond, and then if we need to communicate with people outside the webinar, we'll certainly do that. My first question, Ryan, I'm going to direct it to you, and I have a feeling Bob Woolley may want to chime in on this as well. This is from the Utah Governor's Office of Economic Development, and the question is, what is your view on data security when using cloud services for government purposes?
Sure. So, I'll definitely let Bob chime in, but one thing I want to bring up that I didn't hear Jason bring up too much is the innovation that Jason's office there in the state of Washington had around using data categorization for their applications. So, the state of Washington has a policy that the agencies need to categorize their data into sensitive and non-sensitive categories. They actually have 4 categories, but it kind of comes down to sensitive and non-sensitive, and they have a policy written to help you understand which is sensitive and which isn't. And I think that's a really good start, and and actually they hold the contractor responsible in different ways based on that data sensitivity. So if it's fully public, open data, publicly available data about what time a park opens, or where to get the liquor license, or maybe some GIS data that's out there that shows a map of a place. It's treated a different way than sensitive information that might have PII or CGIS or HIPAA data, which definitely still can go in the cloud, but it needs to be treated in a different way and may have a different price point. And so really wanted to congratulate, the state of Washington and Jason at his office for coming up with that creative concept in order to alleviate some of those data concerns in the cloud.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Bob Woolley from Utah, care to comment?
Well, we've done extensive reviews of half a dozen cloud providers on the security side, and I'd have to say their security is really very, very good. The place where I think we have bigger concerns, and this goes back to the solution architecture perspective, if an application is poorly engineered or if it has vulnerabilities, that's a different problem set altogether, and that's not the cloud provider's issue. For the most part, of all the reviews I've done so far, the cloud providers have come out far, far stronger than I expected. Good judgment is still necessary. There are some things that are highly sensitive. States tend to have applications that, what can I say, they're brittle. Sometimes they're a little difficult to work with. They don't deploy terribly easily on-prem, and believe me, they don't deploy terribly easily in the cloud. So I think we have to look carefully at what the environment is, how we're using the data, what the exposures are, and then for the most part, it isn't a very difficult decision. But overall, I would give the cloud providers very high marks for bending over backwards on security. And when you think about it, they have no choice. They have to be right all the time.
No, excellent response. The next question that we have has come in is from the state of California. It's from CalSTRS, which is the California's Teacher Retirement System. Steve Thompson, I'm going to direct this one to you all over at Salesforce, and because it specifically asked you all, it says, what standards does Salesforce adhere to as it relates to cloud security? And this is from CalSTRS in the state of California. Steve?
Sure, Jimmy, thank you. Yes, Salesforce and our platforms up in the cloud subscribe to all the key security standards, FedRAMP being the most predominant one, FISMA, we're FISMA moderate, as well as FedRAMP, ISO 27001, we've got the SSAE, we've got SOC 1, SOC 2, as well as the PCI DSS. So we've got all of the key certifications from a data security, from transactional security, all in place, and we build our entire company around the concept of trust. And it's our highest value within the company, and without the trust of our customers, we wouldn't exist. And so all of our platform, all of our applications are really the most secure, the most reliable in the industry.
Our next question is from the mayor's office with the city of New York, and I think it's definitely tailored for Salesforce. Steve, the question came in from the mayor's office, and it's simply two words: why Salesforce?
Jimmy, that's a great question. Thanks so much for passing that over to me. The best way to answer that is really everybody is saying today that they're going to the cloud. And the best way to answer that from a Salesforce perspective is in 1999, when we founded our company, we were born cloud. And that's when the whole cloud computing revolution started. So we do nothing but cloud. Our cloud is the most sophisticated in the industry today. Our cloud really brought this revolution to the marketplace as we know it. And it stood the test of time over the past 15 years. And this is a result of the work that we've done in both our commercial as well as our public sector customer environments, where our customers have responded to our offerings with a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. Our customers and their success has propelled us to become the #1 CRM solution provider, the #1 enterprise cloud computing vendor, according to IDC and Gartner. And even Forrester, I mean, they rank us #1 in cloud applications development as a platform provider. IDC ranks us #1 as the enterprise cloud platform in terms of market share. And so we're very, very excited about these acknowledgments and accolades, but we're also very thrilled about how Forbes magazine has voted us as the most innovative company, not 1 year in a row, not 2 years in a row, but actually a record-breaking 3 years in a row from 2011, 12, and 13. And we're particularly excited as well as we've broken into the Fortune magazine's ranking. We're now ranked as the 7th most desirable, best company to work for. And so all of this, again, is a result of our focus on innovation, focus on solutions, and focus on being the leader in the industry for our customers. And again, our cloud doesn't require any hardware, doesn't require any software. You know, it's an easy to acquire subscription model. as I noted in one of my earlier comments, we can reduce the infrastructure costs anywhere from 75 to 85% because of the cloud platform versus an on-premise world. And as IDC pointed out, can return on average return on investment of about 520%. But there's some other key ports that make why Salesforce the answer to the question, and that's all around trust. And Salesforce has been deemed as a highly trusted platform provider. It's actually our most important initiative within the company. It's our highest value, because without our customers' trust, we wouldn't exist. And our platform and applications are the most secure, reliable, and most robust in the industry. And we provide availability that's in the 99.9 plus percentiles. Our average response time is in the 230 milliseconds, sub-second response time. We're processing over 1.5 billion transactions per day, and over 50% of those transactions are API calls. And then if you look at security, we provide all the latest security certifications. We're FedRAMP certified, we're FISMA certified, we're ISO 27001 certified, SOC 1 and SOC 2 and 3. We have all that. And then if you look at the Salesforce One platform itself, just from a application development standpoint, not only are we providing the most agile, flexible, and rapid application development that I mentioned that we can produce applications in weeks to months rather than months to years, but it's an environment that is built on our powerful declarative application development capabilities, which means you don't have to code applications. You can use the point-and-click facilities to generate your solution. And it's the only platform in the industry that both offers a deep development environment for professional developers as well as business professionals. And in fact, if a person has created a spreadsheet before, they can create an application within Salesforce on the platform. And in addition to being able to create custom applications, we have our flagship solutions in the CRM space for sales automation, for service automation, and marketing automation. And as well, we have a ecosystem of business partners that have provided independent software solutions, of which there's over 2,200 available point solutions today on what we call our App Exchange. And these are solutions that are complementary to our flagship apps as well as the custom apps that you create. So bottom line, our mobile environment, our cloud-based environment, everything you create within the Salesforce One environment is automatically mobile, automatically social. There's no special coding necessary to make these additional capabilities happen. And with our easy to go pay-as-you-go subscription model, you only have to acquire those kinds of technologies that you need today, knowing full well that it's absolutely scalable as time goes on. Our infrastructure is managed worldwide and available for customers to grow their business as large as they want, both from a government agency standpoint as well as from a commercial standpoint. So all this has resulted in us achieving tremendous success in the marketplace, and all because our customers have made those investments with Salesforce.
Thank you, Steve.
This is
I realize that we're. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
Yeah, I just wanted to. This is Jason. I wanted to follow on Steve. Another reason is going back to the ROI and the sort of resources you need. You don't need a hardcore developer to build a Salesforce application. You can actually have very declarative drag and drop. You can have a good portion of your Salesforce application built by a business analyst, or in some cases even a reasonably technical user, and you can keep your more.
I didn't want to dominate the entire conversation, but I could actually speak to this point for quite some time, and that's an excellent set of points. So thank you for chiming in on that.
Yeah. We have few more minutes because I do want to be mindful of everyone's time as we get ready to be at 1:15, but I would like to try to answer a few more questions from some different parts of the country. So we've had a chance to hear from California, New York City. We're going to go now for this next question to the state of Montana, the Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And this is the question I'd open up to anyone on the panel. What will likely pose the biggest risk to use of cloud technologies by government over the next several years? So kind of in our mantra at the beginning of the event, the blueprint for the future, would anyone on the panel care to comment on that?
Bob Woolley, and this may sound strange, but I don't believe they're technical issues. I think they're largely political and financial issues. Not really understanding the financial model and how to leverage it, and good old state politics.
Boy, that is certainly a big one when you're like all of us that deal with the government marketplace. There are a lot of mandates that can either make things easy to do or difficult. Would anyone else care to comment on that question from the state of Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks? What will pose the biggest risk to the use of cloud technologies by government over the next few years?
This is Barry, City of Portland. I think the greatest risk is if our customers go at cloud services on their own and they don't interact with their desire or with their projects with central IT. We can't afford as a central group to be fragmented in how we serve our customers. If we fragment our services, we get more than one kind of application, and therefore there's waste. And so I think the greatest risk is that the vendors talk to our customers, the customers agree to do something, and then IT doesn't know about the implementation until the last minute, and then that slows everything down.
Thank you, Ben, on that. We're going to shift over. I'm sorry, did someone else want to comment? Please, go ahead.
Yeah, Jimmy, this is Sean McSpaden from the state of Oregon. Wanted to segue on what Bob and also Ben had to say. I think the issues really are non-technical in nature for sure. One, you know, I had the pleasure of working with Bob and with the states of Montana and Colorado in establishing the WSCA GIS Cloud Services Agreement, and we had many conversations amongst our states about the fact that each of us and our counterparts across the country have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in internal, you know, centralized data centers. And as more and more of the commodity workload is moved out of our data centers, the only thing that is left are the highly complex legacy systems that are hard to maintain, where our skill sets are quickly leaving us through retirement and attrition, and again, they're very costly. And so the economies of scale of our internal data centers, you know, are frankly put at risk by wide-scale adoption of cloud services. And I think that's why it's all the more important that any organization at any level of government really be thoughtful about their long-term strategy in adopting cloud services, whether it be infrastructure as a service, software as a service, what have you. It needs to be a planned event, and as Ben indicated, it needs to be coordinated through you know, the IT organization and/or a leadership group. Some kind of governance structure has to be in place. Otherwise, it's the Wild West.
Our next question is from the United States Department of State, and this will be for Salesforce. Steve, they say that we currently have Salesforce newly implemented. They're just looking for ideas or other ways they can incorporate Salesforce. Could you comment on that?
Sure, Jimmy. That's a great question. Without knowing exactly what you have implemented, let's just assume for a minute that you have one of our Sales Cloud or Service Cloud or Marketing Cloud apps already running successfully. I've actually had the chance to meet with CIOs and CTOs at government agencies all throughout the states across the United States, and there are a number of ways in which really our customers are innovating using the Salesforce One platform. And let me just address a couple of those real quick. I had mentioned earlier about unlocking the back office through integration with Oracle and SAP, as State of Colorado did. And this enables you to expose key data to the right people to enable them to make better decisions. Another way that people are using the platform is to automate business processes. And that's via the built-in workflows and rules engines that we have as part of our solution that easily enable you to configure new approvals and make really connected employees work more efficiently together. Another way is to deliver actionable intelligence via our built-in, easy-to-design reports and dashboards. And that's a great way for agencies to really measure the progress of their agency, their programs, and their outcomes of these programs with their citizens. Another very innovative way that they're using our Salesforce platform is to just using the platform as a way to develop a custom application and innovating it in such a way that they can then make that application mobile instantly. As we know, mobile computing is just exploding by leaps and bounds every single day. And in fact, there was a study that was done by The Economist that said out of all the new apps that are being requested and demanded, over 60% of them are being demanded that they be mobile enabled. In other words, running on an iPad or an iPhone or some sort of tablet or smart device. And yet, typical IT organizations only can address about half of those applications, causing what's called or known as the app gap. And that gap is caused because it's very difficult to create mobile applications in a traditional base environment where you have to create the app and one time and then create a different version of it for every single device type, mobile device type you want to roll it out to. And then every time that device type changes, you've got a nightmarish maintenance issue to keep it current. Well, with the Salesforce One platform, the beauty of our platform is when you create the application one time, with a click of a button, you can deploy it instantly to whatever kinds of multiple different mobile devices. And that's because we built in all those form factor functionalities such that you don't have to spend any time coding in the specific application to fit the device type screen size. It's all managed for you as part of the platform and as part of the services that come built in. And then finally, another very innovative way to utilize the Salesforce One platform is really to revamp your intranet. And oftentimes, intranets are becoming a little bit more like the stepchild of solutions within government agencies, and they oftentimes just don't get the attention they need. And so applications and information that gets put up there often goes there to die. And now with our very, very collaborative social solutions in our communities offerings, you can now create and revamp your intranets and provide them very robust information, and also making them mobile, also making them social, so that it really enables your employees to connect and interact in a more productive and efficient manner, again, through work groups and through communities, both internally as well as facing outward to the customers. So with the platform, the art of what's possible is really quite limitless, and I've just shared with you 5 of the top ways for which you can innovate using the Salesforce One platform. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you for that. I think we're going to have time for just one more question before we wrap up today's event. And I'm sorry, Stephanie, did you want to say something? I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay.
Oh,
let me go
that's okay. Thanks, Jimmy.
Well, I'll go with the last question that we have. It's from Clark County, Nevada, Department of Information Technology. And this is a fantastic question. It says, and this is to everyone on the panel, what has been your experience in dealing with the issues that arise between the cloud provider and the end user customer? Would anyone on the panel care to comment on that?
I think this has been Barry, City of Portland. I think the biggest issue is our customers' understanding of IT in general and what the vendor contract is calling for. And so if we don't have customers who are very sophisticated, they can find themselves very quickly getting behind in schedule, budget, and scope. And so I think that's why we need one of the central IT people to be a part, if not matrix, to the project, so that we, at the end of the day, the city is getting what its expectations are.
Thank you, Ben. Anyone else? Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, we play a careful central role with our customers, where we're really acting more as a service broker than anything else. And I think that alleviates a lot of those issues. But one of the things it does, it causes the customer to focus on the business problem they're trying to solve and not on the technology. Now, we think that's a positive thing, and it causes us, from a broker perspective, to say, well, what is the best way to go? And we've noticed on a lot of large enterprise systems, a number of them lately have all gone cloud, which I think is kind of an interesting twist.
Thank you, Bob. Any last comments from the panel before we conclude today's webinar? We're right at the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of the audience's time. I'll just take a pause for a moment to see if there are any comments from the panel before we get ready to wrap up today. Okay, well, let me do this. We're going to shift gears, and I have a few closing remarks, and then we'll adjourn today's webinar. First off, I want to thank you, the audience, for coming. We have an amazing lineup of people, government and industry technology executives from all over the country that attend today. Thank you for joining us. I also want to thank our esteemed panelists for giving their time today and what I really thought was a riveting discussion on the government cloud, what's working now, and the blueprint for the future. I also want to thank our sponsors. Today's event would not have been possible without Unisys and Salesforce. I realize that some of you, we were not able to get to your questions in the constraint of the 60-minute webinar platform, but if you email them to me or you have questions for our speaker, we will for sure make sure we get to answer those things over the next week. If you can, when we conclude today's webinar, there is a brief survey about the event. Like any kind of event, it takes a lot of work, a lot of participation from our speakers, and we value your feedback if you could spend a few minutes on that. And then next week, we'll send everyone out a link to the webinar so that you can view it at a different time. Again, I'm James Baker with the Public Sector Technology Exchange. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Government Cloud webinar, What's Working Now and the Blueprint for the Future. Good day.